Is the Quran historically reliable? This episode is part of Dr. Rafat Amari's book, Quran and History. This is Daniel Amari from the Religion Research Institute. This episode is about Thamud in the Quran. Thamud are ancient Arabian tribes that lived in a wide area of Arabia. There are many historical and archaeological attestations to them. The Quran has made several claims about them. But how do the claims of the Quran concerning Thamud stack up against documented history? This is what we will examine in this episode about Thamud. Now let's look at the Quranic claims about Thamud. So we read from the Quran, in particular verse 73, "And to Thamud we sent their brother Saleh. He said, O my people, serve Allah. You have no God other than Him. Clear proof indeed has come to you from your Lord. This is as Allah's she's camel for you. A sign, therefore, leave her alone to pasture on Allah's earth, and do not touch her with any harm. Otherwise, painful chastisement will overtake you." And we continue Surah 74. "And remember when He made you successors after Ad, and settled you in the land. You make mansions on its plains, and hew out houses in the mountains. Remember therefore Allah's benefit, and do not act corruptly in the land, making mischief." So let's analyze the verses that we have read. According to the Quran, Thamud is the third generation after Noah. Ad is the second generation, and Thamud is the third generation. The Quran uses the word qarn, which means century. In Surah 23:31, a generation in the Quran can be interpreted as century. The Quran intended to say that the Thamud were the third generation or the third century after Noah. Well, Allah sent a prophet named Saleh to Thamud to warn them. Saleh was one of Thamud. The Quran dates Saleh as ancient as 6000 BC. Now we continue to read about Thamud in the Quran. Now Surah 11, verses 67 and 68. "And the cry overtook those who were unjust, so they became motionless bodies in their abodes, as though they had never dwelt in them. Now surely did Thamud disbelieve in the Lord. More surely Thamud is utterly gone in extent." Analysis: Thamud were completely exterminated by the mythical cry. Thamud is utterly gone and extinct. Now we continue to read from Surah 15, but this time verses 80 to 83. "And the dwellers of Al-Hijr, Hegra, certainly rejected the messenger, and we gave them our communication, but they turned aside from them. And they hewed houses in the mountains in security, so that cry overtook them in the morning." Let's analyze this text of the Quran. Well, Thamud lived in Al-Hijr, which is the city of Hegra. Modern name of it is Nabataeans Saleh. They hewed houses in the mountains. They were destroyed by the cry. Let's read from Surah 14, verses 8 and 9. "And Moses said, If you are ungrateful, you and those on earth altogether, most surely Allah is self-sufficient and praised. Has not the account reached you of those before you, of the people of Noah and Ad and Thamud, and those after them?" The analysis of this text. Moses lived in the 15th century BC, places Thamud with Ad and the people of Noah as already extinct at this time. Furthermore, Moses places Thamud and Ad and Noah as belonging to the same era. This confirms that Thamud was the third generation after Noah and became extinct about the same era. Now we read from Surah 40, 30 and 31. "And he who believed said, O my people, surely I fear for you the like of what befell the parties, the like of what befell the people of Noah, Ad and Thamud, and those after them." Now, here's the analysis of this text. A believer from the house of Pharaoh defended Moses when Pharaoh wanted to kill him, and warned him that the fate of the people of Noah and Ad and Thamud, how they were exterminated for not believing. This confirms that Thamud was exterminated in the era of Noah as the third generation after Noah. Let's summarize all of this information. So, first, Thamud was the third generation after Noah, therefore as ancient as 6000 BC. Second, Allah sent to it a Thamudic prophet called Saleh, but Thamud did not listen and was utterly destroyed in that era. Third, ancient Egyptians and Moses knew about Thamud and the destruction of Thamud. And then Thamud lived in Al-Hijr, Hegra, Nabataeans Saleh, and they hewed their houses in the mountains of Hegra. And finally, they were destroyed by a mythical cry. Now, let us examine the historical account about Thamud. Contrary to the claims of the Quran, Thamudic tribe appeared in history about the 8th century BC and continued in existence until the 5th century AD. They were not exterminated. No records or attestation for them, or by Moses or ancient Egyptians during and before Moses' time, 15th century BC. Instead, historical and archaeological attestation for their existence abound from the 8th century till the 5th century AD. For example, Assyrian, Chaldean, Greek, and Roman records. Thamudic tribes were utilized by the Roman army in the 4th century AD. Thamudic tribes did not live in Al-Hijr, Hegra. They did not hew their houses in the rocks in Al-Hijr. Thamudic tribes lived in a wide region of Arabia. They were not confined with the city or a small local region. Al-Hijr, Hegra was originally a Lihyanite site founded as early as only the 5th century BC. It was taken over by the Nabataeans starting about maybe the 1st or 2nd century BC. The Nabataeans were the ones who hewed their houses or homes in the rocks and mountains, not the Thamudic tribes. There is not archaeological or historical attestation for an ancient monotheistic prophet dated as old as 6000 BC named Salih and his mythical she-camel mentioned in the Quran, and the mythical cry that suddenly destroyed and utterly exterminated a whole major nation, not even in Thamudic records. Saleh is a late Arabic name, not fit for Noah era. Instead, the name Saleh can be found in later Arabic periods, but not before the Christians' era. F.V. Winnett and W. A. Reed, famous scholars for the history of North Arabians, believe that Saleh was a Christian who preached in North Arabia around Al-Hijr after the collapse of the Nabataeans domain. Let's talk right now about the sources of the Quran. Where did the myths of the Quran come from? Muhammad took multiple elements and mixed them together as one story in the Quran. First, he took distinct Jahiliyya report he heard from his contemporaries about Thamud, Saleh who lived in the 6th century AD, Al-Hijr, a Nabataean city. Then mixed them with the biblical story he heard about Noah, the flood, Moses, and the pharaohs. Then he introduced a well-known Arabian, pagan, and Zoroastrianistic mythology about a mythical cry that destroys nations. And about the she-camel, the Quran claims it is a miracle. In the Hadith, Muhammad elaborated about that miracle. The she-camel came out of a rock. This myth was recited before the Quran by a poet, Umayya bin Abi Salt. Umayya associated the she-camel miracle with Thamud. Then Muhammad placed the newly mixed story in the city of Al-Hijr, Hegra, as early as 6000 BC. That is what we find in the Quran. This is Daniel Amari from the Religion Research Institute.